or of maybe corporations or something, as Secretary of State for New York, I don't remember now, and I had put, I needed it authenticated, and I think I paid $10 for it and sent it up with the birth certificate, and it came back with a piece of paper on top of it, and I don't have it in front of me, that it wasn't stapled, it was riveted, that full faith and credit shall, in essence, full faith and credit shall be given to the official acts of the one signing the birth certificate. I had to put, I was either going to Canada or was it Taiwan, because that is not part of the Hague Convention or the area of the Hague that is recognized. Otherwise, they wouldn't authenticate it in the way it needed to be authenticated. Then what I did was I sent it up to, once I got both pieces of paper with the rivet in it, I sent it up to Secretary of State John Kerry. He put a third piece of paper on it, riveted, that says the state of New York, I guess through its official acts, are entitled to full faith and credit of the United States. So what this suggests is, and again, I'm sorry, I'm just doing this from memory, but you must get the birth certificate authenticated, and you have to make sure that you don't want it part of the Hague Convention. And Canada, and I believe it was Taiwan, do not, whatever section of the Hague is not, the certificate comes back as authenticated the way you need it. Let me continue. I was not aware, nor was I ever told by any government official otherwise, that I may have been claiming state property falsely as mine. I want to remain in honor with everything and everyone. For clarification, it seems that I have been left naked, where the principal has delegated authority to the agent for the benefit of the principal, as evidenced by a copy of usufruct compliant certified receipt signed, sealed, and delivered to me, bearing that name, title, or trust or estate. I have enclosed a copy of the indemnity receipt signed and sealed and delivered to me with full faith and credit of the United States of America. The image of the footprints located at the end of this document are mine. Once these footprints are compared to the ones on the original certificate of live birth or other state paperwork that is held in trust, I am sure you, in your official capacity as fiduciary, will take the opportunity to correct state records to reflect that I am alive and well and have not fled. And the I have not fled is from the Libra Code, Article 38. Have surrendered and released the usufruct and reversionary interest. Once this correction in state records has been made, please inform me of this correction and update in state records. I am not interested in any reversionary interest in any estate. It is all the states anyway, as stated in Senate Doc number 43, page 9, second paragraph, April 1933. And this is a quote. The ultimate ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. For example, law, amounting to mere user, and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. End quote. This document, continue on, this document is not intended as warring or a belligerent act against the state or anyone for that matter. However, I still have to live, and by necessity, I must therefore do commerce using the name. I am most certain my Creator would not want me to do without, as He is unconditional, absolute, non-judgmental, pure givingness of love. His abundance is intended for all His sons and daughters without limit. Man, in his ego, or edging God out, the acronym EDGIN got out, has violated the Creator's mandate to share with everyone equally. And that is a true statement. Please provide procedural detail, as I will gladly accept instructions as how I should use this usufruct compliant certificate receipt for any and all future claims against the name or title or estate or trust or any derivation of the name thereof, without creating controversy, meddling, or confusion, as I choose to remain in peace and honor with all my brothers and sisters. In order for you to remain in honor, a response is required within X days of receipt in writing. Please take particular note how to address me as my given name, Anthony. If you address me as the name, please be advised you are addressing me as a factitious entity, and therefore you agree then to accept me as agent of that name in a non-representative capacity. And what that in essence means is, if you insist on doing that, you understand after everything I've given you, you're still treating me as a surety for the U.S. debt, liable party, whatever. You're acknowledging that this is what presumably I am, but I'm not going to accept it. Continuing on, it is evident that no one can have first-hand knowledge of every historical detail, for example, of Lincoln and the Lieber Code. One can only try and connect the dots. However, throughout this document, the history, statutes, and mere observations appear to tell a story, but more importantly, it is a pattern that has been established trying to explain the system, how it operates, with whom, those who make claims to state property. It is my belief that the use of private credit, Federal Reserve notes, originating from thin air to fund governmental operations does not serve any government, any country or government fictional corporation's best interest, regardless if the country is in a state of emergency or not. Men and women are the true and real source for the credit of the United States, a foreign entity to the Republic. As required by law, an indemnity receipt must be issued to the spoliated owner or naked owner if he has not fled and is a peaceful inhabitant. If all property, name, person, etc. is vested or owned by the state, where the state receives all benefit, then under the domestic law, case law, and international law, where the United States is a signatory to such treaty, it is noted under 63C American Jurisprudence 2D, public officers and employees, section 241, and I go on to quote that. A public officer must act primarily for the benefit of the public by accepting a public office. One undertakes to perform all the duties of the office, blah, blah, blah. A public officer owes an undivided duty to the public, on and on, that every public officer is bound to perform the duties of his or her office faithfully. This is like the Obama administration, I guess, right? A public office is held in public trust. That is, a public officer occupies a fiduciary relationship to the political entity on whose behalf he or she serves, and stands in fiduciary relationship to the citizens that he or she has been elected to serve. Public officers are fiduciaries, and when dealing with public property must act with the utmost good faith, fidelity, and integrity. And continuing on, I say this is consistent with 5 CFR 2635.101. I forgot what that stands for. Code, federal regulations. Blah, blah, blah. As a state accepted, created. Oh, no, I continue. I'm sorry. It's not a quote. As state officials, there is an obligation and requirement to perform all duties of which that title of office demands, and all for the benefit of the state. A state accepted, created entity or name, trust, a legal fiction or straw man is a state property and therefore by definition is public and is used for the benefit, credit for government operations of the public. The state, as usufructuary, has the fiduciary duty to take good care of the things subject to the usufruct and to pay all taxes and claims which arise while the thing, property, original title, certificate of live birth, is in his or its possession as ground rent, as all property is vested where legal title is held or owner of the title in the state. The state has left man naked of his private property, dominion, or labor, as it was seized only by way of military necessity for the support and other benefit of the Army or the United States. If the owner has not fled, the commanding officer will cause receipts to be given, which may serve the spoliated owner to obtain indemnity. The spoliated owner is the source of the credit for the United States, a foreign military occupancy to the Republic, that is. Man's private property is held by the state in abeyance in the name, establish a state or trust under the rules of usufruct. That's not 100% correct, and I'll explain that now. It's really not man's private property is held by the state. It's a switch and bait that man makes a claim against that state property, even though there is no legislative authority to use a name for personal identification. And people a lot smarter than me have tried looking this up. I certainly have tried. There is no legislative authority where a name can be used, so why would any government agency be using a name to identify me, or you for that matter? If you look at the Sestake trust funds or that individual public estate as your private property, that would be, and then of course you would have to account for the gains and losses and whatever else went in and out of that estate. I guess that is a way to look at it. The way I mean this is we as men or women cannot do anything without the name. We must use the name to get a paycheck. Well, to go buy food, to have a roof over our heads, a name is required, I guess, unless you live in the mountains of nowhere or the valleys of nowhere. So there aren't too many options. Yes, the government says, particularly on the Treasury website, if you go look under legal tender status, it's not mandatory we use Federal Reserve notes. That may be true, but if I go to the supermarket and I want food, I can't say, well, it's not mandatory you take Federal Reserve notes, and they're going to look at me like I'm crazy. So to make the statement man's private property is held by the state in abeyance, in a sense that's true. They're benefiting because we cannot fend for ourselves without commerce. Society has accepted it, even though ignorantly, and you know what they say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know if it does or not for you, but you really have to think all this through. Let's see. This, continuing on, this makes the state the usufructuary of the usufruct, meaning me. The certified copy of the birth certificate is evidence of an indemnity receipt. Any commercial claims, as all debts are public and can only be discharged. That's another important issue. Debts can only be discharged. How do you pay for them? You don't pay for them with more debt. I don't think most people really grasp that. Federal Reserve notes are by definition debt obligations of the United States. So how do you pay an obligation. You can't. All you could do is just charge it, which is very different than payment. So let me reread that sentence again. Any commercial claims, as all debts are public and can only be discharged, brought against the name, strawman, individual person, ens legis, or whoever, is against the public trust, and thus agents for the trust or estate have a duty to act as trustees, executors, to settle all commercial claims honorably for the name, trust, or estate, or however you look at it. It would seem required without controversy that once the claim to the usufruct has been surrendered and the reversion interest has been released and surrendered for any potential future claims against the public estate, then the state fiduciary must take charge to ensure that the peace treaty be honored and that full indemnification in all matters of that public person or property be acquitted and discharged of all obligations against said public person or property. Any references used herein were studied over several years. Much of it was obtained through the internet from various areas, Wikipedia, books, statutes, international treaties, etc. These references contained herein should be used as a guide to address where we currently stand as men and women on planet Earth. Trusts and treaties exist and must be honored. Please take note, I am not the best writer, and this essay may appear a bit long and repetitive, but in order to get my head around all this legalness and unconditioning, and that's important, you realize we are conditioned to say, I am so-and-so, or John Doe. And unconditioning what has been presumed over many years, it seemed necessary. I also have no clue what the reader of this understands or has knowledge of and how much. If I have made any errors in this essay or have some sort of misunderstanding, please correct me. I am not trained formally in your private law, and I am open to correction. It is my sincere interest in good faith never to meddle in matters which do not concern me, as I believe this is warring or belligerency against the state in the form of rebellion and insurrection. And that's an important term, which you realize that's under the 14th Amendment. Continuing on, since by necessity I must use this name, and I have no intelligent response from any of the multitude of public officials I have sent correspondence to, I am simply stuck. We are commanded to love one another as we are loved, and to owe no man anything but to love another, for this is the fulfillment of the law. And again, I go over points. Number one, it is a fact that the state certifies a copy of a birth certificate. Since it has a state seal on it with an authorized fiduciary signature, it is evidenced as state property, as all property placed under that title or name is vested in the state and for all of its benefit and glory. Therefore, man was left naked. The state sends this usufruct compliant certified certificate to the man to be fully and completely. Oh, I left the statement out. The state sends this usufruct compliant certified certificate to the man to be fully and completely against any and all claims to state property, the title or name, when he uses it correctly and does not make a claim to state property. It would be to be fully and completely discharged. I need to make that change. I left the word out. Number two, there is no law that allows a birth certificate to be used for identification. However, oh, this is good. It is required to obtain a social security number, driver's license, and passport. This makes absolutely no common sense except in law. A social security number is required to open a bank account, obtain a driver's license, or a passport. It is all commerce for the benefit of the state. One cannot use a social security number for identification, nor a birth certificate, yet to obtain a driver's license or passport that are used for identification, both are required. Taking two specific non-identifying documents and putting them together cannot magically turn them into one identification. These two documents separately or put together, turning them into some identification, can never identify